Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talk with TQ and the Energy Stoners Cafe. Tonight, I have one of my very dear friends on, and she's just someone I always, I don't know, I admire her so much. She's very creative. She's just the coolest person. She's actually one of the co-directors of the MOCA, which is the Hudson Valley Museum of Contemporary Art. Did I get that right, Mara Mills?
You got it right, but I'm actually the education coordinator
Okay.
and so artistic director of the theater of the student
Oh,
theater in Exile. So those are two titles of mine these days.
okay. So Studio Theater in Exile is at the MOCA now, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah,
It seems like that's the best home for that place. I don't
it's
know why.
it's a perfect home for that place.
Yeah, yeah. Before we start about your current project, tell my audience a little bit about how you got into stage directing. And I have to say that you do have your style.
Well, I started out as a reluctant actress because I actually got bored after rehearsals were over. So while everybody else was excited about getting up there, running the show, and getting applauded, I was ready to go home. So once I realized that, I started to become a stage director, and I actually started in a little theater in Connecticut, which at that time was called the Barn Theater. And I was the only female director for about 10 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Or there was another one, yeah. Um, it was so that's where I started, and then I went on from there. I like being a director. When I'm a director, I really care about my audience. As a director, I really care about this show, and I like to see it go up. But
Yeah, and you've done a few things. I've seen a couple of things that you've done. Um, the when I first became aware of you, it was when you did the play with Katori Walker called
right,
Ajuma.
I,
Yes, it was
right,
very moving.
it was. It was also. I started getting interested in doing original work, and when I had my old theater in Pleasantville for 13 years, we started doing a lot of original work. But I met Katori. She had a great story.
Hmm.
Her family had lived in Yonkers through 5 generations. Everybody knew them. And her grandmother had come hidden on a boat from Ghana. I mean, it was a great tale. So we decided that to work on that, and that became really a kind of signature piece. And at that point, Studio Theater was touring, so we took it around the county, uh, and then and and then hit COVID hit.
Yeah, you can tell us briefly how you handled that. I always like to ask people what it was like for them. I know I believe, when Writing on the Wall was born during COVID, no?
Well, no, Writing the Walls was born in 2005. So we're in our
Oh,
19th year,
wow.
and that's a whole nother story. Uh, in in 2005, I closed a theater in Pleasantville and walked into the museum, and there was an exhibit called Extra Extra Large. Paintings were enormous, and I looked at them and I said, "Boy, I could put on a show in front of these paintings. Don't need a set, don't need tech. How great!" Except I did need tech because Jeremy was there.
Yes.
So yeah, my little genius. Um, so Livia and Mark said okay, and we started doing poetry and plays in front of the works. And then again, COVID hit, and what we did during actually we had a great time during COVID. I hate to say it, quarantine was wonderful.
I
Uh,
liked it too.
yeah,
I did like the shutdown.
yeah.
Push, yeah, be by myself, be creative. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, we knew we couldn't do writing the walls, so we started something called climbing the walls. Toni, I have something of yours in it. We had altogether, we did 65 different artists in all mediums, and we put them up during the year, from painters to art to theater to dance. We put it all. So when we came back and decided we didn't want to travel anymore, Mark and Livia very kindly let us come home to the museum, gave us a black box, and literally Jeremy Gratt built that theater in that black.
Wow, he did.
He did. He did
Oh,
the lights. He did everything. Put in a back projector so that we really can work without sets. So yeah, so we came home.
it's brilliant the way you actually do things. I noticed that during the production that you're working on now, it's interesting that you can find like a person, and I was kind of watch the way you operate, the way you can draw something out of them, where they might not necessarily know it was there.
Well,
That's
actually, that is the quintessential actor's job.
yes, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And then you're working also with Ed Friedman on a play called Billy. And
right.
he's got a very unique directing style as well.
Yeah, he's a very Ed and I have worked together probably close on to 35 years, back and
Life
forth.
lifetime.
One of my favorite people, but he's an incredibly honorable director. The play, actually, if you wanted to talk about it too, since you're in it, uh, Billy was written by Thomasina. I'm not sure what name Tammy's going by now. Tammy Gaff. We'll do that. That she's. I knew her before she was married, so I never know what to call her. Tammy was a graduate student of mine, and her final thesis was a play about a man who had aphasia and his family. And after I read the play, I said to her, Tammy, I would direct this. And the next thing I knew, I was in a place called Olean, New York, out
Olean?
by Olean. Yep, Olean, New
Yeah,
York. You know
I'm
where it
familiar.
is?
Yes, I do. Yes, my aunt was born there.
You're
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, my auntie was born in Olean.
That is
Yes.
fascinating. Well, I had never heard of it. And I said, sure, I'll come out and direct it. And then found out it was like by the Pennsylvania border in New
It
York.
is the snow belt. Yes.
A very odd place, but I had a very good time doing it and working with Tammy. And Tammy has put in a show the past 2 years that we've done live, 23 and 24. So yeah, it's having Tammy play and Ed doing it and you in it with two of my other favorite actors, Phil Garfunkel
Oh, he's so good.
and Joan Cavallo. Yes,
Yes, they're
yes,
both very good. Very good
very,
actors. Yeah, I
yeah.
feel it's an honor to be on the same stage with both of them, I have to say.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
pleasure to have you, and I'm also glad you're doing the poem because that poem was written by someone who had been working with us on writing the walls for a long time before he moved to Seattle. So obviously he couldn't do it. So I'm really
Yeah.
pleased for doing it.
Yes, I'm very honored for that. I'm gonna do what I can to do it justice because it's an important poem. It
Yes,
is. Tell the audience a little bit about like the basic premise of the show because there are a lot of bits and pieces, you
yeah, there are a
know?
lot of bits and pieces. Writing the walls starts with a juried show that goes into the museum. Uh, and as soon as the pictures, the paintings, the sculptures, whatever is going up is selected, we send out to all the poets, writers, and other places that they can be reached that have either worked with us before or have let us know they'd like to work with us. It goes on our website, the Studio Theater website, it goes on the MOCA website, and we send them the images. And the goal is to be inspired by the art, not to write about the art, but to be inspired to write something, poem, a monologue, or in the case of Sharon Simmons Wright, choreograph a piece.
Hmm.
We also this year have uh, two musicians who are wonderful composers who are coming in the second weekend to end the show with their inspiration. So writing the walls is a celebration of local creativity.
Okay, and there are local people in this show, but not everybody is like mega local. How did you choose people to be in
Oh,
this play? It's a serious play, but
yes.
it doesn't mean that you won't enjoy it when you go to see it or be inspired.
Well, especially since this year's topic for the juried show was war. When we first came up with that for the museum, we thought about everything from real wars, but there weren't real wars going on at that moment in time. We're going back because, a show takes a while to plan. So we thought of war, internal wars, domestic wars, community wars, whatever, war on drugs, war on women, you name it, whatever war there was. Um, we got a lot more about actual violent war than we thought we were going to get, but we
Mhm.
did. And some of it is funny, uh, actually, and some of it
Yeah,
is tragic, and some of it brings us through the history of the wars in the generations of the people that are talking. Michael Sirkin wrote a piece about his father being in the war and coming home, and the title of it is My Father Told Jokes.
oh
Uh,
yes.
yeah. Um, then people wrote about people they had lost in wars, whether to PTSD or to death, or just they never came back the same. There are people who wrote about children, not only how they're affected by war, but just about children during a war. I'm thinking about uh, the piece Potsdam, World War II in Potsdam, which just talked about a childhood going into the woods and picking berries, and not really, it's not about war. And yet the war is there hanging over the domestic scene. So it's kind of a fascinating topic, and what has come out of it is really, you're right. It's a heavy subject, but not everything in it is heavy.
Right. And I think that when people see this play, then they see the performances, they'll have a lot to talk about. I feel that from what I've seen of it, of other performances, because I have my job, but then other performances, um, it was interesting to see how people were treating the script. The actors, I'll say that I've noted that I've seen that have, done their readings and everything. I see that the actors take it very seriously. And I think because the writing is so excellent, it's very easy to sort of become one with it when you're actually reading it.
I think the difference between coming to see something like this, which is a performance, as opposed to going to a poetry reading, is that they are performing. They are approaching the subject so that every time they read it, it is happening at that moment, which is what happens on stage.
Yeah.
So the way of reading it is different. There's emotion in it. There's interpretation in it. Um, and I think that's really important because most poetry is not read that way. Monologues, yes. Some of the people with monologues have an easier time getting into it, but I'm really proud of the poets because very few poets are taught to read performatively.
Yeah. And even though I think I might have been middle school, junior high school. I remember we were writing, and I just remember the teacher. I wish I could remember her name. She said that poetry is meant to be written and read aloud. Yeah, that's, it stuck with me. And I realized that because it's not the same when you're just moving your eyes across the page as it is when someone stands up and recites it to you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Part of the difference is when you write a poem, the structure of how the words are on the paper affects how you read it. When you read a poem, you read it as a whole piece. The structure of it, whether it's 3 lines to a thing or a sonnet or whatever the formula is, you ignore because you can't perform something that stops in different places. You have to kind of rearrange it in your head. And I think for a lot of poets, that's something they don't do. And here's a chance for them to actually get up and kind of emotionally feel their poem, not just the words.
Yeah, this play, it's very easy to feel it emotionally. I'll say for myself, I sit in the audience and listen to other people's readings, but then I'm looking at the performance, a different way. Look at it with two different eyes, with two different sets of ears. But it's very emotional, it is. And I have to say that I really commend, the other people in the play for being able to open themselves up and experience the experience on stage what they're feeling, and bring it across to not let the words not lose their beauty. I don't want to give anything away, but it's an interesting play. It's very emotional. I'm thinking about it a little bit, getting a little like choked up, but
Well, it's an interesting experience for poets because they're not used to it. Actors get on stage, they become a character, they emote from that character. It's work, it's hard, but it's understandable. And here are poets, they're not actors, a lot of them. Most of them are not actors. And they get up there and suddenly they find something creative in even the recitation. And that's something very, very unusual to be able to get to.
yeah,
So,
you're very good at drawing things out of people. I have to mention, I noticed it. I noticed it with you. I said that I saw that Ed had a different style. He tried an approach that I had never experienced. I haven't been on stage in so long, but this
uh-huh.
approach, it really changed the overall reading that we did as a group as he had us do a certain, I guess I call it an exercise.
Mhm.
And then you really know exactly what you're reading about and why, as painful as it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, the piece you're reading is really about terrorism.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very much so.
There are 2 pieces. One by Laura Trecci about in memoriam about an 8-year-old boy who was killed and talking about there's no more birthdays. Um, that's a very, very hard thing to face. And Billy is the same that play
Yeah.
it the same way. It's
Mhm.
examining terrorism as it's happening.
Domestic terrorism in his own home.
Yeah.
It's unthinkable, really. It's the kind of thing where, if you've been somewhat insulated throughout your life, and I think a lot of people in this area have been, they've been through different things, but, you know, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it
Okay.
away, but it
We'll
is,
have to come and see it.
you have to come and see it. And I'll tell the audience also, they'll see people that they'll recognize, from different places, maybe from the neighborhood, maybe from other performances, maybe from TV, maybe from the movies, maybe from other plays. So it's worth it going to see this. And also, I think that in this collection, I'll call this ensemble of a performance you have, there seems to be some kind of a common denominator among us, and I can't figure out what it is. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to figure it out, but it's
Creativity. It's all
create okay,
creativity.
creativity. Not
Yeah.
everybody's an actor, but they're writers, and they're even there's a publicist in one of the performances, and I was talking to her for a while, and everybody has feelings, you
Yes,
know? And
yes,
if you're not afraid to feel something, you want to see this play. And also, I don't want to give out the characterizations, the difference in the characters, but everybody has a different attitude towards violence. And what I noticed is that when you're reading about violence, your attitude can change as you're reading the words. You're starting to hear the words to yourself and you're like, oh my God, that's like really hard. That's really something. That's really horrible. And having empathy for the characters, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Which
one of the other things I really like about that, besides people getting in touch with their own emotions, bringing the audience along with them for that, is that we have professionals up there and we have people who have written their first poem.
That's right. Yeah.
And those poems were judged by a 7-member committee, which I recuse myself from anonymously. And so all the people that are accepted, then the next step is to get them together and rehearse and look what the flow is going to be for the thing. And every night turns out to be different. Even
Yeah.
though the majority of the work might be the same, it's always different and there's always a new work within it
And there's a different audience,
and a different
which
audience.
changes the performance. At least it should, you know? It
Yep.
changes the performance. It's a different audience completely for a different vibration of people.
Well, and not
You,
only that, the performers themselves come out of the audience and they don't come from backstage, they're with you. And in a sense, that's one of the reasons we really call it a community event, because we always, when we did it as a walk around the museum and working in front of the actual artwork, um, we would go as a group, as though we were on tour looking at the paintings. And then someone would come out of the group as a poet and read. And so that it had a whole different, it's a different flavor. I mean, first of all, you have an audience that really wants you to succeed.
yes.
uh, but it's the idea that they're coming out of the community to show themselves. And then they walk off the stage and they're back in the community to support each other.
Yeah. What do you think you're talking about? This is like a juried I want to say exhibition, but the pieces were juried, and so
Yes,
they submitted it, and it's kind of like a competition. I was having a conversation with someone today about, I really do believe that it's okay for artists to compete. If it's okay for athletes to compete, it's okay for artists to compete, in my opinion. And the other thing is that this play and the kind of work that you do, Mara, because you do juried performances, juried writings, juried exhibitions. What happens in this is that someone might not ever be recognized is suddenly recognized for the work that they do. I've saw it in Ajuma, Katori Walker. She was probably known somewhat, but now since that play, and I mean, you chose her play, she's really gone far, and she's really gone
yeah, she's
far.
doing terrifically. Yeah.
It
I
launched
think we would
her.
have done it anyway. I
Mhm.
think we just pushed her into the light a little faster
Yes.
because she's an
Okay.
immensely talented woman.
I know it's incredible how talented she is. And if it wasn't for this competition or whatever it was, no one would know about her. Um, but at the other hand, I do agree with some of my colleagues that say that artists shouldn't compete. I disagree. Anyway, I think it's a good thing, you know?
Well, competing is a funny word because it, especially in the art world,
Hmm.
um, there were pieces that were not picked. In fact, one of the playwrights asked me why his piece wasn't. He thought it was really good. He was picked for another thing he wrote, but
Hmm.
not this play that he wanted to put in. And I looked it over and I said, "Yeah, it is. It's a good piece. Why didn't the jury pick it? I don't know.
Right.
It's maybe they felt it didn't fit with anything else. And if you're going to put up if you're going to put up an art show with a lot of different pieces, and if you're going to put up a performance with a lot of different pieces, you have to kind of see how they begin to fit together.
And I imagine it as a juror and the jurors. I've been on jury. I do a jury thing. I won't mention what it is because I'm anonymous, but and it's not in this country anyway. But I think that the fact that there's a panel of people, just to say this to other artists, it's a collective decision. And if you knew what it was like to actually be a juror or a judge in one of these things, it's hard because art is so subjective.
Yeah, it's very hard.
It's very subjective, but I have to assure the audience that this particular performance, the people that are actually directing, the performers, are people that I highly respect. The writers, my hat's off to them. Thank you, Bob Zaslow, for I'm trying to do justice to his work because I don't have any work in it. But I'll also say that April is National Poetry Month. Okay. And so the timing is perfect. And
Yes,
so I know there'll be people all over the country that'll be interested in this play at some point.
Yeah, well, we will put up some of the performances on the websites. And actually, there is an archive at MOCA of 19 years of them.
Wow. So this is a real deal, this thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to leave the audience on that note because I really want people to come and see it because there are some great performances. I'll just say that I feel really moved when I'm there. It takes a lot to even sit through the whole thing, if you're someone that is very sensitive. But come and see the play. It's a community thing, local and global, so come and see it. I'll ask you real quick because I'm supposed to wrap it up, but I'm taking the liberty to ask you one more question. Will this performance be streamed in any way?
It will be. It won't be streamed while it's on. We haven't done that yet, but we will have it back on. We'll after all the tape is edited, then we'll put it on. After that, it's if people need to know, Hudson Valley MOCA is at 1701 Main Street, Peekskill.
That's
and
right.
Black Box is Studio Theater's Black Box is right in the corner of it.
Right. But come and see it. And Studio Theater in Exile, is within the MOCA, and it's the Black Box is a really special place to go. Don't be scared. You'd be sitting next to like real human beings, not zombies. No, it's a really great place to go. And I take my hat off to Mara because you're just like sensational.
Oh,
I've wanted to work with you for so long and finally I had the opportunity. And now a lot of people have the opportunity to see your great work and also to reflect on things and also to examine things that are important that sometimes we don't like to think about. So on that note, I'll tell the audience to come in back and listen to the next show, but check out this play, check out Writing the Walls 2024 at the MOCA, okay, at the Hudson Valley MOCA in Peekskill, New York. It's a great experience. You really should go and check it out. It'll be something that I feel that'll open your mind and open your heart.
And all the artwork is going to be up. So
and all the art will be up. Yes.
What it is. So yeah.
So come early. It's really good. No, that's a wonderful place. It is. You'll see. You show up. Okay. Thank you, Mara Mills. Okay. And thank you, audience. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.